Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and I'm on my own for the TV news, which is weird. I've never done this before, so this might be a complete shambles, or at least as much as it normally is, hopefully. And maybe it'll go smoother because that Ginger's not here to mess things up with his weird opinions. I don't know. Car's on vacation, so I'm doing news on my own. So we're talking about TV news now. Interestingly, I normally, of course, am wearing headphones because I have to hear Connor, and we're recording audio, so I can't just have the audio blaring. I don't need to be wearing headphones today, but I'm doing something that Connor always does. Connor's always listening to music when we're recording, and I don't get to do that. I don't get to do that because I have to record the audio that's coming through my PC for his side of the conversation. But on this rare occasion, I get to listen to music while I'm recording, and honestly, it might throw me off. I'm not used to doing it. I'm used to it being silent, other than his voice, obviously. So we'll see how this goes. But this is the weekly TV news. Talk about shows in development, talk about premieres, cancellations, renewals, all sorts. In fact, there was a last minute thing that just happened that I didn't put into my news, but I remember it. I don't have to remember any details. It's a pretty straightforward news story. So we'll start with that. But yeah, so that's what's going to happen. It's actually quite a big news week this week. I don't know how long this will be, having just me here. Is it going to be shorter? Am I going to waffle on for longer because he's not here to stop me? I have no idea. We'll find out. So let's see how this goes. So TV news this week. Starting off with the thing that just broke that I didn't write down, but it's easy enough to remember. Iron Fist has been cancelled. This is the first Marvel Netflix show to be cancelled at Netflix, obviously, because it's a Marvel Netflix show. But first one to be cancelled, pretty big deal in the sense that they've drawn first blood, and it means that they're not safe. Even Iron, like I don't necessarily think this means they're going to start cancelling the others. I think the others do well enough. Windows is giving me notifications. Go away, Windows. I want no part of it. I guess season 2 didn't do as well. I mean, I imagine that a lot of people just didn't come back after season 1 because season 1 was awful. In fact, including us, we didn't come back for season 2. We've dropped all the Marvel Netflix shows, but I have to imagine that between less people even trying the second season, and then on top of that, we know that Netflix monitor social media. They like to keep a track of what's trending, other shows being talked about. I have to imagine that season 1, for as terrible as it was at least been talked about a lot because it was surprisingly terrible. It was like everyone was like, "Whoa, this is terrible. Why is a Marvel show this bad?" And obviously, it's not as surprising anymore. And I think because it's season 2, because there's no shock value in it, no one was really talking about it. Not really. I barely saw anyone talking about season 2. So I feel like these are the reasons why it's been canned. So there you go. That's Iron Fist is dead, and I don't think many people are going to be that upset about it. Especially since because he's so connected to the other characters, I still expect he'll probably pop up in Luke Cage. In fact, hell, he might even become a regular in Luke Cage now since there's no Iron Fist show. So I have no horse in the race anymore because we're not covering these shows. But still, I mean, it's nice to see Iron Fist kind of be cancelled because it was that bad. It was that bad. I suffered through that 13 episode season 1. Not being very happy about it. Obviously, people have lost their jobs potentially, and that kind of sucks. But I have to imagine that the teams that work on these Netflix shows will get work on other Netflix shows with a reasonable likelihood. I think. I'd hope so. Anyway, you hope that's how it works. Even the other Marvel shows, which I assume all shoot in a similar location. So anyway, moving on to other stuff, we had a renewal from Netflix for Ozark. Ozark got renewed for season 3 for 10 episodes. Not surprising, people seem to like that show. We weren't really into it. We tried the pilot, but for if you like Ozark, you get season 3. So cool. Speaking of renewals, the Kidding got renewed. That's the Showtime show that Jim Carrey's on. That's been renewed for season 2 at Showtime. So there you go. And then we got a premiere date for True Detective season 3. That's going to come in January 13th. It's an 8-episode season with Mahershala Ali. I nailed it. Connor's not even here to see it, but I nailed it, damn it. But yeah, so that's coming January. So January's starting to heat up. We've got a few things now scheduled for January in terms of premieres. So looking forward to digging into some of that stuff. So that's the quick things. But it is worth mentioning just briefly as well that CW has actually ordered more episodes of a few shows. A few of the shows that are starting, in the next this week, next week, this time period, have got extra orders. So Charmed's one of those shows. Charmed has got 5 additional episodes, as has All American, giving both those season 1s 18 total episodes. And then Legacies has had, how many is that? That's got 3 more episodes, which brings it up to 16 for its first season. Legacies, of course, is the spin-off of Vampire Diaries, and I want to say the second show was called The Originals, maybe? I think that's what it was. So they've all had extra episodes, which is promising in terms of their confidence in the shows, given that they've not even aired some of these yet, if not all of them. I know Charmed doesn't start until Sunday, because I'll be covering that. But yeah, so no, it shows some confidence, and maybe that's a good sign for those shows going into the rest of the season. And speaking of CW shows, we did get our first look at Batwoman this week. We get a promo image of her in costume, of Ruby Rose in the outfit. Me and Connor talked about this on the Television from the Multiverse podcast, where we talk about the DC shows. But I will just it's worth mentioning here as well in the news, and it's worth just reiterating my thoughts. It looks pretty solid. It's got a good look to it in terms of the texture. I'm glad that it's not this leather jacket look that the Flash suit, well, at least did have. Doesn't anymore. The Flash suit's changed actually quite a bit this season. But I think texture's one of those underrated qualities of a superhero outfit that doesn't get brought up as much. And I really don't like some of the leather jacket looks. I don't like the rubbery look to the Superman suit, for example, in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. And I would happily take the much cheaper Lois and Clark looking suit over that. But I do actually think that in between that, the best texture I've ever seen on a super suit was actually Supergirl. I think that it looks like a real fabric. And it looks like it has a nice quality to it. This Batwoman suit has a bit of a mixture, but it does look like it's not either of those things, and because of that, it looks a little bit better. There's a nice red highlight sort of towards the bottom of the cape, which I like. If I have any critiques, it is that the red gloves and boots are not there. It's all black. The red symbol's still on the chest. She has a red belt, and she does have the red wig, so that looks good. So she looks quite authentic, despite the fact that the red boots and shoes aren't there, or the boots and gloves rather. And the one change they've made that doesn't really neither bother me or not is the cowl is more of a traditional Batman cowl, except it's got the wig on top. Whereas in the comics, Batwoman has like this sort of pointy kind of open top element to her mask. So I think they've simplified it a little bit in that sense, but it looks good. It looks good. And typically these look really bad in promo shots. And I remember even Supergirl's first image looking really bad because it was one of these overly photoshopped images. But as soon as we saw it in set or in actual episodes, it looked quite good. So the fact that this already looks pretty promising in this image is a positive sign. I will say I really hate how cheap the bat signal looks in the background, but I think it's just a really stock image just to put behind her, because obviously she's been photoed on a green screen or whatever. But hey, and speaking of CW shows, one bit of disappointing news to add is that Kirk Adavate. Oh, that's got a typo on it. I copied that from I think Deadline. They've made a typo on his name. That's maybe a C. Kirk Acevedo has become a regular for season 7 of Arrow, which is disappointing. Not because I necessarily dislike the actor. I've liked him in a bunch of stuff, but he plays Ricardo Diaz, the villain from last season, that was absolutely atrocious and cheesy, and every trope in the book. Me and Connor were absolutely livid that he didn't die at the end of the season, and now there's going to be more of him this year. That is upsetting. It does not make me enthused for Arrow at all. It does not. But yeah, so he's a regular now for season 7. So we have some casting news now coming up. We have a bunch of casting things. Some of it kind of big, actually. Not that I know these names, these actor names, but we got Freya Allen and we have Anya Chalotra, who have both been cast in The Witcher. Now, I don't know much about the actors here, but they have been cast as Ciri and Yennefer. Ciri, of course, being the younger character who kind of becomes a bit of a surrogate daughter to Geralt, the main character played by Henry Cavill, and then Yennefer is his love interest. The one notable thing here, I think, is that Yennefer looks much younger than I think anyone was expecting. The actress looks You got Cavill as his girl. You've got Yennefer looking like she's just out of high school compared to him, which was surprising because certainly in the games it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like they're pretty similar in ages, at least close enough. They're both adults enough that you don't really think about it. But I mean, I think the promo. I've never seen her in anything, but the promo image did make her look very young. Some people were showing other images of her though that made her look a bit older. So I wonder if they're just maybe hedging their bets and they're wanting to cast young so that they've got someone for a long time. That might be the reason for this. I don't know. And they've got Suri here, who looks, she's a young girl. Put the white wig on her, and I'm sure she'll look pretty good as Suri. Not really familiar with the actors themselves though to talk about their skill or their talent, but it looks pretty promising nonetheless. Obviously there was a report a while ago about Suri that they're looking for a person of color for Suri, and that's not turned out to be. Apparently it was explained that was just one of several casting calls, so it wasn't that they were specifically looking for a black actress or a Hispanic actress, but interestingly, Yennefer's actress isn't white, so she's actually sort of taken that role, if you will. But yeah, so it's just worth mentioning because there was a bit of, as always, there's controversy that someone might be recast as a different colour, and it'd have been completely okay if they had done, but turns out she wasn't. So here we go. They also announced a bunch of other cast though for a bunch of other characters who I'm not super familiar with a lot of these characters. I've not read the books. I've played the third game. I've played a good chunk of the first game. So I'm not familiar with a lot of these characters, but we did get a bunch of other cast mentioned here. So Suri is Princess of Sintra, and joining from her side of the story, the court at Sintra, includes Queen Calanthe, who's going to be played by Jodie May, who's been on Game of Thrones and Genius. Her husband is Knight Eist, I want to say, who's going to be played by Bjorn Hilner Haraldsson, who's been in Fortitude. I wasn't expecting the third name there. I was thinking so much about pronouncing the middle name that I was like, oh, there's a third name after that, jeez. And then Druid Musak, played by Adam Levi, who was on Nightfall and Snatch. And leading the Magical Academy, which is where Yennefer's kind of side of things. We got Tisia, who's going to be played by Miana Burring from Ripper Street and Kill List, and then you have Novice Sorceress Fringilla, played by Mimi Ndwenti, or sorry, is that a silent N or a silent D? Ndiweini. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, she was on Black Earth Rising, and there's actually a sorceress named Sabrina in this, which I find amusing, given that Netflix is about to launch a Sabrina show. But Sabrina is Therica Wilson Reed, who's been on Profile, and also joining the cast on top of that is Millie Brady as the outcast Princess Renfrey, and they were on Last Kingdom and Teen Spirit. So I know none of these cast members. This is a lot of names I have never heard of. But the cast is filling out. It makes it feel like, oh, the show's real. It's happening. There's like an entire cast list now of things going forward. So that's cool. Moving on, still some casting. Robert Finster has landed the title role in Freud, which is also a Netflix show. And it's about Freud. It's about him tracking down a serial killer in 1890s Vienna. They've also cast Ella Rumpf as Fleur Salome, the infamous medium who teams up with Freud alongside the veteran Alfred Kiss, played by George Friedrich. Swiss actress Rumpf starred in Raw. That was the French film about cannibalism, which I have seen and was very good. I would recommend that movie. But yeah, so we got cast for this. This is an 8-episode show. It is directed by Marvin Kren, who directed 4 Blocks, doing all 8 episodes. So this is an unlimited series from Netflix. Sounds interesting. If they spend a lot of money and get the time period looking good, and then have a good murder mystery element to it, I mean, it could be something. So that's Freud. And then another bit of casting, we have Michael K. Williams from The Wire. He played Omar on The Wire. He was also in The Night Of a couple of years ago. He has landed a lead role in Lovecraft Country, opposite Jonathan Majors. This is the Jordan Peele and J.J. Abrams produced Lovecraftian horror show, but they're going cross country to save, I think it's one of their mothers or their fathers, and they have to deal with racism, but also monsters ripped out of a Lovecraft book. So we've been pretty pumped for this because of just the I mean, Peele and Abrams involved. Sounds like an interesting premise, and then you throw in Michael Kenneth Williams is a really good actor. I like him a lot, so this is cool. Alright, so now we're on to something else a bit more interesting here. So WarnerMedia, now AT&T's WarnerMedia, is planning a streaming service. A streaming service probably not unlike Disney's streaming service. It specifically mentions it's a global direct-to-consumer streaming platform. So this sounds like it'll be worldwide, just like Disney's is going to be, Disney Play. So this was the WarnerMedia CEO, John Stankey, revealed this plan on Wednesday at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit in Los Angeles. So they're looking at this, and they want to launch it by the end of 2019, and they're going to mine their library of content to fill it. It will be fronted with HBO, with content from additional WarnerMedia brands bundled around the premium, all around that premium service, Stankey said. Price will not be determined until the project comes to market, but Stankey said that it will be more expensive than the current HBO over-the-top subscription plan, which he said is priced more fairly thanks to the emotional engagement of WarnerMedia content like Game of Thrones. So it sounds like it may be a little bit more premium, which is interesting. The CEO also said content spend at WarnerMedia would be competitive to that of Netflix. So it's worth mentioning that Netflix's media spending right now is $8 billion. This is the only part of this that actually tells me they're going to make original content. Because everything before this, it was just, oh, we're going to look at our library of, HBO shows, we're going to look at our library of movies, and we're going to put them on. But them saying, no, we're going to be competitive with the $8 billion that Netflix spend on content tells me, no, they're going to be making stuff for this. They're going to be producing content for it. Otherwise, what's that $8 billion going to? So, it's interesting. So, I am of two minds about this. And on the one hand, I think, sure, I expect most of the big companies to do their own streaming service. My big problem with this is that, okay, if you tell me there's going to be a Warner Brothers streaming service with all of their back catalogue of movies are always available, because they have such a huge library, and they're going to put all the HBO shows on there, I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty good, especially if they're making new original content for it. My big problem is why do they, because they've got DC Universe, and they've got like a Boomerang thing for cartoons, and I'm like, what? Like, I can't imagine why they want to fragment it themselves. Like, I mean, it's going to be bad enough with all these different people, all these different companies wanting to do their own streaming service. I mean, I saw a report last week that piracy is on its way back up. Not because of even cost, although cost is a factor now that if you want to get everything, you have to have, X number of streaming services. But just because of convenience, because it's getting harder for everyone to keep track of what service has what and what they need for X show and so on. So it's actually on the rise again. And it baffles me that one company wants to have multiple streaming services when surely having something that encompasses all of their content, when you're someone like Warner Brothers who has so much in the vault, you have so much. You have probably one of the largest libraries of movies of any company. And you have you have HBO under your banner. You have all these different things. You have DC Comics and all of their content. You have Boomerang and Cartoon Network and all this stuff. And I'm like, wouldn't charging like $15 say a month for something that encompasses all of that, which would be it'd be maybe a little bit more expensive than what they're going to charge for any of these services on their own, but If you're someone who has kids and you want the kids options there, if that includes like the Boomerang stuff, you get your HBO stuff, and then you've got all this, if you're a nerd as well, and you've got all this superhero stuff in the middle, and I feel like that's a really like enticing proposition. But they're trying to really milk it. They're trying to milk it by having all these different services. And it gets really wacky, I think, when you start really just oversaturating the market. And we're going to have this Disney one, which I'm sure will do decently because it's Disney and they have Star Wars and Marvel and they're going to do stuff with those. But I think when it was just Netflix, Amazon and Hulu, it was like, okay, because you want competition, you don't want a monopoly, you want people to be competing with each other. That's a good thing. But there's a point where there's just too many of these things and it starts to like hurt the overall landscape. Because people don't want to have 9 streaming services. The whole point is that it's easy because you have a couple, and that's everything you would want. So again, we're diluting the market, I think, a little bit with adding more of these. But I mean, again, we knew it was going this way. I just wish that companies like Warner's wouldn't have multiple services. Just have one big one, and keep it as simple as you can on your end. You know, maybe that's how you compete with Disney's, because Disney will have like all of their stuff. Although they do have a separate like kids Disney thing, but they might incorporate that. I'm not sure. Because they have like the young kids Disney one, don't they? I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I don't know. So yeah, more streaming services coming. I wonder though if this just incorporates HBO. Like, is HBO still a separate entity, or are the shows they're making for HBO going straight to this as well? Does this replace like HBO Go, because now it just goes straight to this, but you get extra stuff as well. You get all this big library and so on. I'm curious what the breakdown of how they distribute their content will be after this. But there you go. So, and is all the DC movies, are they just all not allowed on this because they have DC Universe as well? Or are they on both? Is that the weird thing? Will this have DC Universe content just without the comics and the other bits and pieces that it would be lacking? I don't know. At that point, you're kind of cannibalizing your own stuff. So, I don't know. We'll wait and see. But yeah, so Warner Brothers are wanting their streaming service. Moving on. So we're getting to the new shows now. We're getting to the development stuff. So, on to the comedies first. Comedian Chris Spencer is developing a multi-camera comedy at Fox that has LeBron James among its producers. The series is called I Just Do, and it is inspired by Spencer's comedy. It's about an African-American family therapist and his loving, expressive Latino wife living beyond their means in an upper-middle-class neighborhood, where they are raising twin teenagers with the help of their intrusive parents. So it's a family comedy. You've got some... I assume some clashes with which is probably going to be with a very white upper class neighborhood. I imagine that's what they're going with this in terms of some of the commentary and comedy and satire, and I'm assuming there's some satire. It feels weird not to do it with this show, but at its core it's a family comedy with your wacky parents and troublesome teenagers. So, you know, could be a thing. Could be a thing. So that's at Fox. Next up, Jim Parsons, obviously from Big Bang Theory, is executive producing a multi-camera comedy in the works at ABC. It was competitive. ABC's grabbed it. They've got a put pilot commitment on it. It's called Bless Her Heart. It is described as a multi-generational family comedy centered on two very different Texas matriarchs who wreak havoc on their children's lives when they wind up living together. The series is inspired by Parsons' early life in Texas. So this is two families living together. That is the premise more than anything. Yeah. Again, there's a lot of multi-generational family comedies in the works. I was noticing that word a lot. We'll see if it pops up a lot. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like I saw that word a few times this week. Next up, ABC is given a put pilot commitment to a single camera comedy project from Zoe Lister-Jones. Lister-Jones is known for her acting work, but will serve as writer and executive producer on the project. It is called Women Up, and it follows two former teen mums who have worked their asses off to see their daughters all the way through high school graduation, and now at 37, they're ready to make up for their youth they never had. So this is, kind of a comeback story in a way, and you've got the two of them working together as a kind of a support system. I imagine their kids will probably, be big characters in the show. Again, it's kind of a family comedy. This is single camera, which I think is important, because this feels like one that will be less just in the house, or just one location. This feels like one where we're going to see the two of them, go to night school or go to jobs or whatever they're doing, and try to like get their life sort of, reinvent their life after they've seen their kids off to college. Although I still expect the kids to be around. I feel like there's too much comedy to mine from having their 18-year-old kids be there to kind of almost help them be youthful and be like, hey, it's like what are the kids doing now, and their kids can be there to help, and you get comedy out of that because their kids feel awkward or whatever. I mean, it's pretty obvious stuff, but so that's called Women Up. Next up, NBC has put in development Weights. This is a comedy based on a UK show from Matt Tarses, who worked on Scrubs, and Will Arnett, of course, who's from Arrested Development and a bunch of other stuff. This is coming from Sony Pictures TV, so this is NBC though, so it's called Weights. So it's It's an adaptation, of course, of the British TV show. It's set in the fast-paced and hilarious kitchen at a beautiful restaurant in upstate New York. Roland White, a disgraced wunderkind of the New York culinary scene, has spent the past 3 years here in exile, and things are complicated when the owner hires Emily, a new pastry chef who is as gluten-free, farm-to-table, and gender-neutral pronoun-using as anyone on the planet. So this is a clash of someone old and set in their ways and a younger, liberal person coming in and disrupting the system in a restaurant, in a kitchen. I can see the comedy there. I can see the comedy. It's NBC. I typically gravitate towards NBC sitcoms more than any other network, so I am willing to give this more of a chance. It could be obviously very on the nose with the clash between the two characters, but we could see. I don't know. I wonder how you translate some of the commentary here to cooking. Like, how do they use cooking as a metaphor for some of what they're tackling in terms of subject? I don't know. I feel like they're going to try, though. I feel like that's what you're supposed to do with this. But of course they'll learn to work together because it's a TV show and we have to have a happy, positive message and ending. But yeah, so next up, Cal Penn. It says here from Designated Survivor. I feel like Cal Penn's been in a few other things that's probably worth mentioning more, but he is going to co-write and executive produce and star in a comedy series, also at NBC. This is a pilot commitment from NBC. He's co-writing it. It's an untitled comedy right now, but he's writing it with Matt Murray. And also Michael Schur's producing or supervising. Which is notable because he, of course, produces The Good Place. He worked on, I think, both Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So this is someone whose comedies I like. I mean, he's not as directly involved, I don't think, but his name being attached is kind of promising. It centers on a disgraced New York City councilman and a former baseball wunderkind, Garrett Shah, played by Penn, who finds his calling when faced with 6 recent immigrants in search for the American dream. So he's someone with a sports history who's now a councilman, and he's going to try. Do you know what I think is interesting about this one is that this doesn't sound like a comedy. I only know it's a comedy because they told me it's a comedy. The actual text of what the show's about sounds like it could just be a very serious drama about immigration and a councilman trying to do the right thing. But they're telling me it's a comedy, and that almost makes it more interesting. It's like, okay, how do we farm comedy out of this? How do we comment on social issues by using this and doing it in a funny way? And I can see it being pulled off, because I think mentioning Schur and Brooklyn Nine-Nine has actually become a very good show at tackling issues. Over the last couple of seasons of that show, it got very, very good at bringing up, it was an episode where there was a mass shooting. It brings up the fact that Rosa came out as gay, bisexual in one of the episodes. So they started handling a lot more things, and it felt very natural, and it felt very true to the characters in that show. So I'm hoping that, handling something like immigration in this, we'll get some of that tact applied to it, where it works, it tells its story, but it's also endearing and funny, and possibly even heartwarming in some ways, because sometimes Brooklyn Nine-Nine has surprised me how much better. I mean, it was always a fun show, but it got better as it went along, and it started tackling really big stuff and did it in a really in a deft way that that had a deft touch to it. So really cool. So yeah, that's Untitled. I always like to repeat the title at the end, but then I was like, oh no, that's not got a title. Shit. Okay, I'll just flub my way through it and move on to the next thing. Next up, NBC has put in development Women Scouts, a comedy from late night with Seth Meyers' writer Alison Horde. Women Scouts centers on a feminist who, after dropping out of grad school, pledges to kickstart the lives of a group of women by becoming an adult Girl Scout troop. There's no limit to what life achievement badge they can conquer together, and if they can just figure out the whole sisterhood thing first. Alright, okay. With the right tone, I can see this being good. It's definitely a cartoony concept, a little bit more. It's a bit more in your face, high concept, I guess. For a comedy that we're going to be adult Girl Scouts like that. So I have to admit the title Women Scouts doesn't quite roll off the tongue. It feels a little bit clunky. I don't know. I get why they're calling it that, but it feels a little bit clunky. But hey, so no, I can see the humor here. I hate to always go back to the comedies I like and like compare them to it, but I could if you had someone like Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec, like I feel like having someone, a character like her as the lead, is what would make this work. You have someone who's a little bit different, who does these wacky things, and you give it that right tone, and then you might be onto something here. You might be onto something. But yeah, so that's Women Scouts. Next up, CBS comedies, meaning that we can probably ignore them for the most part. But Patricia Heaton is going to be in a new comedy at CBS. She was, of course, in Everybody Loves Raymond at CBS, which is one of the few CBS comedies I actually kind of like. That show has its detractors. People don't like that show, but I do think the supporting cast in that show is really good. And was really funny at the time. But so she is going to be starring in a new show and executive producer. It's a multi-camera comedy, and it's got a series commitment of all things. So it's not just a pilot. This has got a series commitment. Which doesn't necessarily mean that it'll actually air, but it does mean that she and some others will be paid for a season no matter what. Meaning that it probably will air because they want their money's worth, basically. So it's called Carol's Second Act. And the series follows mum Carol Chambers, who after raising her 2 children and retiring from teaching embarks on a unique second act by deciding to become a doctor. So this reminds me, of course, a little bit of the other one a few stories ago of the 2 teen mums who are now in their 30s. Their kids are going off to college and they are going to have another try at life. This is obviously a little bit different in the sense that it's, again, a little bit more high concept. It's someone who is in their 40s is going to try and become a doctor. Which, you know, traditionally is a profession you have to sort of get in the ground floor of pretty young, and because it requires a whole lot of training. I mean, I don't know what age you are by the time you can actually practice medicine. If you go straight into like med school as early as you can, what age can you actually be practicing by? I'm not sure, but it takes a while. And that's why you don't typically get this. So I can see why they think this will be funny. Coming from CBS, I expect a lot of really, I don't know, like I can see her being in like a medical school and like all these young like, you know, students are all going to like make her feel out of place. It's almost like the equivalent to that show that's starting with Nathan Fillion, The Rookie, where he's the old cop, but he's the rookie, but he's like older than everyone else who's at the same sort of level as him. And this feels like it might have a similar thing going for it. But it's on CBS, so I expect even less of it. So, you know. So, next up, ABC has put in development Americanized. This is another comedy, of course, half hour. Inspired by Sarah Seedy's memoir called Americanized Rebel Without a Green Card. And this has been produced by Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine production company. So, Americanized tells the story of a loving and offbeat Iranian family who's been living with a huge secret. They're undocumented immigrants. I was going to say immigrants. Undocumented immigrants. And they're told through the irreverent and heartfelt and political lens. The series will give viewers a window into the life of a Middle Eastern household while exploring the universal truths that bond every type of American family. Very topical. There's a lot of topical shows. I mean, I think we noticed this trend a lot last year as well with the shows that were in development. They're really trying to tackle various subjects in the sitcoms, especially. I feel like we're getting a lot of that. Yeah, I could see. I mean, it adds like a different element to a sitcom. I think is having an undocumented family like this. Yeah, I'd be curious to see what the tone of this is going to be, and what the focus is. Like is the plot of the show going to be them constantly? Are they constantly worried about being found out? Is that part of the plot of the show, or is it almost just a background thing where like, okay, that's there, but it's more about just having a family sitcom in a house, you know? I'm not sure. I'd be curious. But hey. So, next up, ABC put in another comedy. This is a multi-camera comedy at ABC, and it's called Food and Familia. And it's going to star Danny Trejo, actually. So, this is a Danny Trejo starring sitcom. And it's coming from sitcom veteran Peter Murrieta. So, Food and Familia is a comedy about second chances, inspired by Trejo's life. When the matriarch of the family passes away, she leaves her restaurant to her son Danny, who's about to get out of prison, and her granddaughter Michelle, who hates her father for abandoning her. The gift from beyond the grave might heal the father and daughter and get them back together, but it's going to be a rocky as two of them have to work out their differences while trying to operate a restaurant, live together and become a real family again. So again, we have a couple of similarities to another show. We had the restaurant one before with the sort of the older guy and the young liberal new chef, and this is a little bit different. This is a father-daughter, but I can definitely see a lot of the same humour and the fighting about the food. And this one feels like it could have a lot more obvious wackiness of in the sense that it sounds like they're both amateurs. Neither of them sound like they've ran a restaurant before. Maybe I'm just reading into that. Maybe the daughter has been working at the restaurant and she knows how to run it or something. Which maybe makes the father feel even more out of place. Like he comes in here and he co-owns the place, and but yeah. So this one feels like a more traditional sitcom to me. I can definitely see the workplace. It's going to all be set in the front of the restaurant and then in the kitchen area. That's your two main sets. And you're going to have a lot of panicking behind the scenes while they're trying to serve customers in the front. It's kind of traditional comedy, but it's also comedy that can work very well. I'm not a big multi-camera guy, of course, these days, but I like Danny Trejo. So, it could be some. That's Food and Familia. And then next up, we're on to the dramas, the hour-longs. And we start with the juicy one, because typically I'll leave CBS to the very end of the list, because they tend to be the less interesting stories on the show. But in this case, this CBS show is a DC Comics property. Which, by the way, DC, what the hell are you doing? You're launching your DC service, you're making exclusive content for it, and you're still farming out concepts to other networks. It's kind of insane to me. Now I know they've got a lot at the CW, and I'd expect even more at the CW because we know we're getting Batwoman as well, potentially. But at the same time, it's like, leave some properties for yourselves. Come on. And at least the CW is a co-Warner Brothers owned network, so it's like, okay, right, I get why this is all happening. But CBS is developing Secret Six, which is a DC Comics team. It's kind of Suicide Squad-esque in the sense that it's a team of villains, but it's a little bit different. The project, which has received a pilot production commitment at the network, follows 6 morally ambiguous strangers, each with their own unique specialities and secret pasts. They are brought together by an enigmatic figure who blackmails them into working as a team to expose the corruption of the corporate and the political elite. So there's no obviously list of characters here. It's worth mentioning that a traditional character on this team has been Bane, Catman. I don't think they're going to get Bane. Catman, I'd predict. I feel like the other bigger characters like Lex Luthor, I don't think they're going to get. Mad Hatter's been on the team. Penguin's been on the team. A lot of different villains. I've not read a ton of Secret Six. Gail Simone's got a really good run of it that is well regarded, and I know it's a very good anti-hero team. I think people tend to hold it in higher regard than Suicide Squad, at least out of the more recent years. And I think because it maybe has better characterization, and it's more than just, we'll blow up your head if you don't do what you say. So this concept for a show is interesting. On CBS, I am baffled because one of two things are going to happen. It's going to be good, and it won't get the mammoth ratings that CBS expect of its shows, and it'll be cancelled or move network, like happened with Supergirl. Or it'll be watered down so much to fit in CBS's style, their formulas, that it'll be worthless anyway, and who cares at that point. So I am not optimistic about this. Obviously, I still hope it's good, and I still hope that if it is good, that it maybe goes to a different home later, but on CBS, I do not expect any success. I expect it to either move or be cancelled. That's how I feel about it. I can't get passionate about something on CBS. I just can't. I've been hurt too many times. So, Secret Six could be interesting, but still, there you go. Next up, Netflix has ordered a show. They've ordered a new series starring Emma Roberts, who I do quite like. Emma Roberts is pretty cool, and she is going to be in this ice skating drama called Spinning Out. It stars Roberts as Kat Baker, an up-and-coming high level skater who's about to turn in her skates after a disastrous fall took her off the competition track. When Kat seizes an opportunity to continue her careers as a pair skater with a talented bad boy partner, she risks exposing a fiercely kept secret that could unravel her entire life. On and off the ice, Kat and her new partner will face daunting odds, injury to body and soul, financial sacrifice, and even potential mental breakdown on their way to realising their Olympic dream. And the season that's been ordered has been for 10 episodes. So, I can't say I'm that excited about this. As much as I like Emma Roberts and Netflix do make good stuff, this definitely feels like it's something outside the wheelhouse of what we do and what we cover. I even enjoy sports movies and TV shows to a point, because as much as I don't really care about sports, there's a nice formula to them. There's a nice sort of uplifting kind of morale thing. This feels like it might be more of an awkward love thing with the bad boy partner. and I don't know what the secret is, unless the secret is that she was injured and she's trying to hide that, in which case it's not that big a deal in terms of us caring, but yeah, so I'm not super feeling it. I mean, maybe if the trailer's good, we'll check it out, but yeah. But hey, Netflix adding more content, more diverse content, so have a look. Next up, TNT has given a straight-to-series order from a sci-fi show. It comes from Ridley Scott, who's producing it. Not directing or writing, though, which is, just in case you're worried by that. The title is Raised by Wolves. The series centers on two androids tasked with raising human children on a mysterious virgin planet. As the burgeoning colony of humans threatens to be torn apart by religious differences, the androids learn that controlling the beliefs of humans is a treacherous and difficult task. Well, that sounds kind of good. That is actually a fascinating synopsis. That's one of the most interesting synopses we've read on this show in a while, I think. That doesn't necessarily mean it'll be good, for sure. It could be terrible, but I can't deny the potential of this. That robots are raising humans and there's no actual other humans to raise them. And then the humans kind of break it into these religious differences and the robots don't know how to deal with it. And they're like, wait, these humans are weird and fickle. I sense a lot of commentary about how humans behave and act in this. Kind of how in the same way a lot of horror movies do the... you know how you have Night of the Living Dead or even Dawn of the Dead or The Mist, where you have a group of characters trapped in a location and we end up having groups splinter and form, and it's kind of almost like a magnifying glass on how society runs and forms and how prejudices become a thing and how paranoia and greed and all these different things, like how societies function. I can see this being almost a really in-depth version of that, where we're going to examine how human beings break down and have allies and form factions and all these different things. And then the fact that we've got androids doing it just adds to the potential satire, or at the very least the potential cold examination of what's going on. I see a lot of potential in this. Aaron Guzikowski is going to serve as the writer and executive producer and showrunner. He wrote the screenplay for Prisoners, which is a pretty solid movie. So, I mean, that's encouraging. So this is a TNT show. It's called Raised by Wolves. Interesting. I consider my interest peaked, TNT. Peaked. This is a weird thing about doing this on my own for such an extended time. I have no breaks while Connor's talking about something. Let me have a drink. Moving on. Hulu is given a straight-to-series order to a scripted drama that will explore the rise of the Wu-Tang Clan. It's called Wu-Tang, an American Saga, which received a 10-episode order. Is inspired by the Wu-Tang Manual and the Tao of Wu. I mean, I've heard of the Wu-Tang Clan. All these things existing, though, are catching me by surprise. Based on the true story of the Wu-Tang Clan, set in the early 90s New York at the height of the crack cocaine epidemic, thank you. The show tracks the clan's formation. The group was a vision of Bobby Diggs, aka I'll say RZA, but RZA is how I'd pronounce that. I assume it's RZA though, who strives to unite a dozen young black men that are torn between music and crime, but eventually rise to become the unlikeliest of American success stories. I'm not a big biopic guy in general, but I'll give them credit here. This sounds like a pretty interesting story, and in the sense that it seems like such an unlikely success story, but the fact that I have heard of the Wu-Tang Clan means that they make it big enough that someone who is not interested in that type of music, who does not pay attention to popular music at all, has heard their name. They must have gotten pretty damn big, and so I can see the motivation to do a story about this, the motivation to tell this, and especially since Straight Outta Compton a couple of years ago did very well. That was very highly regarded, and I think it was nominated for a bunch of things. So I feel like this is maybe a natural kind of follow-up to that in a lot of ways. But again, this is a complete outsider's perspective on this. But yeah, so Hulu's doing this. 10 episodes. It's called, right now it's called Wu-Tang, an American Saga. We'll see if that title sticks. It feels a bit clunky to me, but yeah, there you go. Next up, Facebook Watch, which apparently exists still. I keep reading stories about Facebook Watch existing, but I've yet to see evidence of it. But they've greenlit a drama series called Limetown, which is going to star Jessica Biel in it, and she's also going to executive produce. Based on the podcast of the same name, produced by 2UP, Limetown follows Leah Haddock, a journalist for the American Public Radio, as she unravels the mysteries behind the disappearance of over 300 people at a neuroscience research facility in Tennessee. They've ordered 10 episodes for the first season. I'm actually oddly... I'm curious about this one, actually. I feel like I can see how it was a podcast first, right? This sounds like a podcast. She's a radio DJ, not DJ, that's not the right word. She's a journalist for American Public Radio. So I can see the podcast being like episodes of this radio show where she's talking about this like week to week, and that's how the story is told in the podcast. I imagine the TV show will have stuff outside the radio booth, right? I imagine so, but at the same time, I can see a lot of the show being that, and that being like a nice framing device for what's being told. I do like stories like this. I like stories where we don't get to see a lot of it. As much as, you know, film and TV are a visual medium, I do love when you get a story. There was a movie called Pontypool a few years ago. Actually, it was about 10 years ago now. Time's moving too fast. Where the entire thing's set in the booth at a radio station, and they hear about this apocalyptic thing happening, and as this show goes on, like, it gets crazier and crazier. I like stories like that, so I'm actually oddly curious about this. This might be the thing that makes me watch a Facebook TV show. So it's called Limetown. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by that one. I like the idea. Next up, Fox 21 television studios have optioned the rights to the Dresden Files, the long-running New York Times best-selling series of contemporary fantasy novels written by Jim Butcher, for TV show development. So interesting here that this is Fox 21 television studios, and it's not like Fox the network or anything like that. It's worth mentioning that Fox 21 television studios will absolutely be Disney when everything goes through. Should everything go through, we're hearing it'll be done in January when this is finalised. Fox 21 television studios will be owned by Disney, and this will be under Disney's banner. Well, it may still be under Fox 21, but they'll be owned by Disney at least. So, Joe, it's funny. I started this article when I was reading through the news, and I was like, I've heard of this. Why have I heard of this? I assumed it was a really old series, but then later on it says the first novel in the franchise, Stormfront, was published in 2000. And the 15th book just came out in 2014 called Skin Game. And I was like, only 2000? Really? I feel like it's been around for a long time, which I guess it's kind of a long time now, but I feel like it must have been around longer because I've heard of it. And then I read the bottom of this, and it finally revealed why I've heard of it. The Dresden Files was previously adapted for TV as a short-lived series on the Sci-fi channel, starring Paul Blackthorne, who was on Arrow, of course, as Quentin Lance. So yeah, it only got 12 episodes and got cancelled. It was in 2007, but I think that's why I've heard of this. I think I never saw it, but I think I must have seen the advertising for it. Being on Sci-Fi Channel, or that was back when I was probably still channel surfing. I don't really do that anymore because it's 2018, but back when I was channel surfing, and it would say in the guide, coming up, next Dresden Files, like, I must have just seen the title a lot around that time, and that's why I've heard of it, because it sounds like a big thing to me. I'm like, the Dresden Files, yeah, it's a big franchise. People talk about the Dresden Files, and maybe it's not as big as I thought it was. Maybe it is just a series of books that are successful, and it had one failed TV show. But hey, so yeah, the books follow a private investigator and wizard, Harry Dresden, as he recounts investigations into supernatural disturbances in modern-day Chicago. In the world of the Dresden Files, magic is real, along with vampires, demons, spirits, fairies, werewolves, outsiders, and other monsters, just like the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You knew it was coming. So, yeah, where are we? Harry Dresden works as the world's only consulting wizard. So that sounds a little bit like Sherlock, consultant detective, consultant wizard, accepting supernatural cases from both human and non-human clients, as well as Chicago PD's Special Investigation Unit. As the series progresses, Dresden takes on an increasingly important role in the supernatural world at large. as he works to protect the general public, making getting by as a working wizard and private investigator difficult for him. He finds himself facing off against an increasing variety of creatures, including other wizards, while facing the realization that his various cases may all be tied together behind the scenes, and that his role might be even greater than he is willing to admit. So yeah, there's some master plan, there's some big bad, everything's behind everything and whatnot. It sounds like pretty typical stuff for that you'd expect in a story of this nature. It's funny, I made my Buffy reference in there, but I think what's interesting about this is I'm getting more of an Angel vibe, actually. Well, like an actual, I mean, obviously Angel's not a wizard, he's a vampire, but just the PI side of it. Although I don't necessarily see him having a team like Angel does. I feel like this is going to be more of almost a noir solo cop. Yeah, he's got contacts in the police force, but he's a lone wolf kind of thing. That's what I'm getting from this description. I could be wrong, but I'm interested. I'm not a big fantasy guy, but like, first of all, not being set in fantasy medieval world is a big plus for me, and secondly, this is horror fantasy. This is I mean that list where I made my Buffy joke. Vampires, demons, spirits, werewolves, fairies, outsiders, other monsters. That I can get into. As a world that we're in, and we've got this guy, taking down monsters and whatnot. So certainly there's a few things you can draw comparisons from. I always assumed it was more of a sci-fi thing from the title as well. The Dresden Files Dresden sounds like more of a sci-fi name to me, but I mean, whatever. So yeah, it says that the books he recounts his stories. That's why it's called the Dresden Files. It's like his summaries or his reports of what happened. I suspect that might play into the narration. Maybe it'll play into how they bookend the episodes. Maybe we'll get a scene at the end of him writing his report as we hear what he's writing or something. At the very least, I'm expecting some noir style narration of him talking about the case, and that's when she walked into my office. The dame who lost her husband to a vampire or something. I don't know. I don't know why he's talking like it's the 30s when I assume this is at least present day. Yeah, I think it said that actually. This says in Chicago. It could be the future. I don't know why. I'm getting slightly future vibes from it. Do you know what I'm getting actually? I'm getting Tex Murphy. If you've ever heard of the video games, the PC games, Tex Murphy, it's like a cyberpunk detective game. It's just a point and click with FMV cutscenes. But I'm getting almost that kind of detective-y vibe, but mixed with Angel. Is what I'm getting from the Dresden Files. But hey, so that's the Dresden Files, and that is Fox 21 who's developing it, but which network or where it will go, who's to say? It could be anywhere. So, moving on. Beacon 23, which is Hugh Howey's best-selling sci-fi novel, is heading to the small screen. The project is coming from Zach Penn, who worked on Ready Player One, Avengers, X-Men franchises. He's done a lot of big stuff, apparently. It's getting a series order from Charter Communications Spectrum Cable Systems. This is another one of these weird ones where I'm like, oh, okay, they're making shows. Okay. Alright, I'll take your word for it. So, yeah, Beacon 23 is the name of this. It's based on the novel, as I said. It's being produced by an independent studio, Platform One Media, and Spectrum Originals. So, I imagine it'll end up in other places as well, everywhere else. But yes, Charter Communications Spectrum Cable are getting this exclusively. So it's set in the 23rd century. A series of beacons help passing ships avoid disaster. The TV adaptation focuses on a man who thinks he will find his peace manning one of these remote lighthouses in space, but he quickly discovers that he can't outrun his past. Now, the actual plot of what he's going to be doing and what's going to happen to him when he's in space at one of these lighthouses, at one of these beacons, is vague. We don't really know. I will say this is ticking a lot of boxes for me in terms of setting. Even if this wasn't a space show, even if this wasn't a science fiction show, I do like stories about the one or two people who have an outpost, either a lighthouse or the thing where it's a research station in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the middle of the Arctic or whatever. The idea of there's nothing else out there. It's just one or two people in a small structure of some kind, and then something happens and they have to deal with it. I like those types of stories. And then you add in space to that, a bit of sci-fi. I'm also going to be down it for that because I like sci-fi. So I'm cool for the elements of this. So I'll be interested in this. I mean, obviously I have no idea what the quality of a Charter Communications production is going to be, but I have to admit, I like the sound of the premise. It's just a case of, is the character interesting? What actually happens to him when he's out there? Is it psychological? Is it a lot of flashbacks to his time on Earth or something? Like, you know, what are we doing with that? But Beacon 23 is what that's called. It's a good title. I like it. I like the title. Because you go, Beacon 23, why 23? And it makes you think about what this is. It's just, oh no, it's just that's the beacon where the story's happening. There's like 100 beacons, but probably thousands, but 23 is the important one. That's where things are happening. So, moving on, Greg Silverman's Stampede has acquired the film and TV rights to Under Glass. Under Glass is a debut novel by Sam Marsden, that first appeared on the Wattpad publishing platform. We've heard about that before, actually. There was a story about a month or two ago about Wattpad's... one of the Wattpad stories being turned into a TV show or a movie. So the book is set in a glass-domed Martian colony that follows 17-year-old Eva Knight, the daughter of the colony's president who detests life on Mars and wants to return to Earth. When her brother is executed publicly under the government's zealous greatest good for the greatest number policy, she is forced with a choice: accept her mother's path for her future as the dictator of this place, or find her place in the resistance. So, obviously, again, it's ticking some boxes for me. Sci-fi, colony on Mars, glass dome. It's kind of like the what one were we just talking about the microcosm of society? It's kind of that again. It's this small society in a glass dome. It's slightly larger on the scale because it sounds like it's a full culture. You know, it's a full town of people essentially. But I like that type of setting again. Obviously, I like the sci-fi elements. The zealous part of it, you know, the greatest good for the greatest number. It sounds like her brother was killed more out of like a almost like he was conscripted to be killed rather than because he did something wrong. Like X number of people have to die to sustain their food supply or something. I don't know, whatever the reason is, and he was just picked at random, or whatever. And we have this main character who's going to be on the path to become the dictator of this place, or help the resistance. I imagine there'll be some double agenting going on as part of this. So again, there's no network for this. It could go anywhere. I like the title. Under Glass is a really good title for this, and yeah, I see potential. I find the premise promising. There's a few good sci-fi shows in the works, right? A lot of promising premises. Anyway, moving on. So Bruna Papandreou's Made Up Stories has acquired the rights to Sidney Pike's historical epic The Lost Queen to develop for TV. This was published last month by Simon & Schuster's Touchstone Books. The Lost Queen is based in medieval Scotland, a land of mountains and mist, tradition and superstition. It follows Langareth, a woman born between the ways of the old ancestors and the burgeoning forces of Christianity and the Anglo-Saxons, bent on colonization, if I say that properly, encroaching from the east. As she is captured, as she is catapulted into a world of violence and political intrigue, she must learn to adapt and survive. And together with her brother, a warrior and druid known to history as Myrddin, aka Merlin, if I said that first word right, but that's Merlin, has to assume her duty to fight for the survival of her kingdom and the way, and it's yeah. This is what happens when I have to talk the entire time myself. My mess ups are just going to get worse and worse as we go on here, so let me just pause. She has to assume her duty to fight for the survival of her kingdom and its way of life, or risk the loss of them both forever. So I'll tell you right now, Connor's not here, but Connor would love this. This is the one where Connor's like, oh yeah, this is my thing. Oh, I'll love this. I'm a bit more skeptical. I got kind of interested earlier on when it said land of like tradition and superstition, and I thought, oh, we're going to do like mythical like creatures in like medieval Scotland. I was kind of into it when I thought it was that for a second. It sounds like it's less that, although Merlin being a factor kind of, you know, does whatever. I think it's going to be more of a straight story than I would have liked though, in terms of the maybe I'm wrong. But I know Connor's going to be foaming at the mouth thinking about this one. This sounds like right up his alley. For me, I'm more middling. I'm more kind of like, oh, we'll see how it is. Just because of my taste more than anything else. But there you go. Next up, NBC is developing a series based on a character from the popular novel Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Abraham, I said that weird the first time. I said Abraham. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. It's called The Last American Vampire, which is a good title. You know what? That's a good title. I'll give you that. The Last American Vampire is a fantastic title. The potential series is described as a supernatural thriller that follows Abby, a young analyst, as she's recruited into a special division of the FBI that investigates unique and mysterious cases. While working on her first working on her first case tracking a string of bizarre murders, she discovers her new enigmatic partner also happens to be a 500-year-old vampire. And it's got a script commitment penalty. This sounds a lot more like a generic TV show than I'd be hoping it would. You know, it sounds like, it sounds like the joke we always make about Fox is that it's a buddy cop show, but one of the partners is a thing. You know, it's a vampire, it's the person's father, it's a zombie, it's a ghost, it's a whatever, it's a robot. This kind of fits into that for me. It sounds like a buddy cop show where one of them's a vampire, and it sounds like it's probably going to be generic because of that. Maybe some awkward vampire romance stuff as well, if you're really unlucky. So I'm not thrilled with the idea of this. I mean, I'm not opposed to it either. It could be better than I'm giving it credit for, but I can see how it would be just a generic TV show, right? I can see how it would just be like any other like buddy cop thing that just happens to have a bit of a supernatural twist. Moving on, we have the remarkable story of Isaac Wright Jr., who was wrongfully convicted as a kingpin who got his conviction overturned and became a licensed attorney. So this is obviously, right away you can see, okay, this is why they want to make a show about this guy. This guy, was a criminal, or was wrongly convicted as a criminal, and then became a lawyer to almost help his own case. It comes from Last Ship co-creator and executive producer Hank Steinberg, and it's produced, amongst others, by 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson. So, written by Steinberg, the Untitled project is based on Isaac Wright Jr., once wrongfully convicted as the kingpin behind one of the largest drug distribution networks in New Jersey, who now practices law in the same courtroom where he was sentenced to life behind bars. In prison, Wright studied law and worked as a proxy lawyer, writing briefs and motions to overturn the convictions of over 20 fellow inmates and ultimately to exonerate himself. He now works as a lawyer defending the wrongly accused and going after corrupt institutions. This guy's life was made for a TV show or a movie, right? Like, this guy, had the worst luck ever by being wrongly convicted, and I'm calling it luck. I'm being kind of kind there, probably. I assume we're talking about corruption here. We're talking about racism. We're talking about all these things to why he ended up where he was. But the fact that he took what he was dealt with, the shittiest hand possible, and he worked to train himself, help others, and eventually help himself, and now is like actively has a career fighting the very system that put him down is inspiring, and it is exciting, and it's all these dramatic words that you could throw at it. That said, I don't know if I would be into the show necessarily. I don't see an ABC show about this being that interesting. If this was on like HBO or something, I'd be like, oh, this could be a really good tight 10-episode thing or whatever. On ABC, I'm expecting a more generic law show where it's set in the present, where he's an active lawyer, but there'll be flashbacks maybe to him in prison learning how to be a lawyer. That'll be like, it'll almost be like Arrow, where there's like flashbacks every season to like time in prison and how he went there and all that stuff. So just a little bit of information here after the fact. After passing the New Jersey Bar in 2008, Wright spent 9 years being investigated by the New Jersey Bar's Committee on Character before being admitted to the bar in September 2017. So it took a long time to be approved. So this is when Jackson signed a deal to produce a TV show based on his life. The dude worked hard. He had to put up with a lot of shit, and he turned everything around. The fact that they were investigating his character for 9 years before they let him be a lawyer officially. That is insane. Like, why does it take 9 years to make that choice? Like, that reeks of bullshit right there. So I could see like this could be a fantastic show. I think on ABC it's probably going to be more of a generic law show that has some nice like things about it. It'll probably have some nice messaging and tackle some stuff, but I don't expect it to, like, for a law show it really needs to go above and beyond for me to be that excited about it, and I don't think ABC are going to do that. But props to the guy and props to making a show about it, because it seems like a fairly good story on its own. So next up, ABC has put in development a show called Trailblazer. A 1-hour drama from former Quantico writer Joe Webb. Trailblazer centers on Jordan Cruz, a gifted man's basketball coach. A gifted man's basketball coach. One man. She just coaches one man. She has one client that she coaches, not the whole team, just the one. But yeah, so she's a gifted men's basketball coach at a small D3 college in South Dakota, who rises to fame when she's recruited by the UCLA to become the first female coach of a Division I men's team. Well, she quickly wins over the school's female president and shares an undeniable spark with the scout who discovered her. Jordan faces more enemies than friends as she disrupts the old boys' dog clubhouse of big-time college hoops. The drama is about strength it takes to achieve greatness and the wisdom to realise that we can't do it alone. Obviously, it's hard not to read this and think of Pitch, which was about the first female baseball player in the major leagues, which was a good show. Like I like season 1 of that show. This is one of these things. The idea that college sports is as big as it is baffles me to no end. I mean, I don't like any sports. So I don't really care about watching any sport, but college sport being as popular as it is, because there's not enough professional sport to enjoy. You have to then fill up your time with all this college sport. Is weird to me. This is just not something I understand or culturally, I've ever been a part of. But yeah, so I can see a lot of the beats here. ABC, yeah, this feels like an ABC show. In terms of what it's focusing on, in terms of the feminism side of this, that I'm sure is going to be a big part of the show. In terms of all the obstacles she's going to face from the men, this feels like an ABC show. And I can see it maybe doing well on that network, and getting the buzz that it wants. Hopefully it's written well. Hopefully the writing matches the topics that it's going to be tackling, which isn't always the case on network TV, especially. But I can see there being potential there. Next up, Fox has given a pilot commitment to Forest Treasure. That's as in the possessive, Forest Treasure, as in a person's name, Forest Treasure. An hour-long drama from the Shy executive producer Elwood Reed. McGee is going to direct the pilot. So Forest Treasure is described as a grounded family drama with a flair. First of all, grounded family drama after I read a title called Forest Treasure. I'm like, this is going to be an Indiana Jones TV show, right? That's what we're doing with this, right? But no, it's a grounded family drama with a flair for adventure, inspired by David Kushner's upcoming book on the treasure of Forest Fen. So Forest was his treasure. It's kind of like Uncharted 1, like it's called Uncharted Drake's Fortune. It was Drake's treasure that Nathan was looking for, in a way. When a family from Chicago moves to a small town in Montana to pick up the pieces of their fractured lives, they find meaning and purpose in the mystery of a hidden treasure. So this sounds more like a family drama to me that happens to have some searching for treasure in it, as opposed to an adventurous treasure hunt show that stars a family, if that makes any sense. It sounds like we're going to have a lot of stuff in their house with them like adjusting to their new life, as opposed to them out like searching for treasure. So I don't know. I'm not feeling it. But who knows? Maybe it's for you. Next up, Fox has given a pilot commitment to Kung Fu, a present-day sequel to the 1970s David Carradine TV show. This is coming from Sleepy Hollow executive producer Albert Kim, and Greg Berlanti is producing, because of course he is. He produces everything on TV now, apparently, and movies. We had him pop up. He was producing 2 movies on the movie news like a week or 2 ago. He popped up in movies back to back. It was insane. So, written by Kim, Kung Fu is an action-driven procedural about a young Chinese-American woman who inherits her father's Kung Fu studio, only to discover that it's actually a secret center dedicated to helping members of the Chinatown community who have nowhere else to turn. With the help of a former star pupil, a smart and driven ex-Marine, she vows to continue the school's mission. In the process, she discovers things she never knew about her family, about her cultural background and her family's heritage, including a connection to a legendary ancestor. And that ancestor's probably Carradine's character from the original show, because that wasn't set in the 70s, that was set in the Old West, with him going around being a Kung Fu master of some kind. I never saw it, clearly. I don't know a whole lot about Kung Fu. So they're doing that. This was kind of what we wanted from because they've got a Magnum PI reboot on right now, and they were going to do another Magnum PI reboot like a year ago, 2 years ago, where it was going to be Magnum P.I.'s daughter, and we thought that was more interesting than what they ended up doing, which was just remaking it completely. Whereas here they're doing the it's not the daughter, because it's, you know, a much bigger time jump, but it's like the ancestor of the character from Kung Fu, and she's running this dojo and helping the Chinatown out, and she's got this badass Marine who's backing her up, and I don't know. I mean, again, I feel this is probably going to be a fairly generic action show, but you never know. It could amount to something. Yeah, so that's Fox. That's Kung Fu. Next up, Fox has given a script commitment plus penalty to Remedy, a medical drama written by Lovejoy. I feel like I'm missing a first name before there. I think I am. Apologies for that. Remedy is an aspirational drama about Remedy Shaw, a young female medical professional with a rare neurological condition that allows her to literally feel the patient's pain. So it's kind of supernatural then, or it's science fiction-y then, because she's got this condition where she feels the patient's pain. That's weird. She's like an empath, basically. As she enters the impersonal, evidence-based medical system for the first time, she discovers that her unique ability to empathize, there's that word, we just called her an empath. Her weird ability to empathize with the patients allows her to do more than cure the sickness, it heals people. And in the process, she may even heal herself. That was the cheesiest way you could end that paragraph. Medical drama, even with the slight sci-fi twist, I feel like it'll still just be a medical drama. And that's, if you like medical dramas, knock yourself out, but not for me, typically speaking. And that was actually the last story. I didn't warn you, because I didn't realise it was the last story, but it's the last story. And here we are. That is the TV news. Obviously, at the end of the show, we typically pick our favourite episode of TV of the week. I'll just say it right now. It was Better Call Saul. They had their season finale. It was very, very, very good. Very big ending moment. Great acting, great performances all round. So I can't fault it. So in terms of, and I'm pretty sure Connor would pick that as well, for the record. I think Connor would also be picking Saul in a heartbeat. But in terms of telling you what's coming up, so we just finished Maniac. Me and Connor finished Maniac, the Netflix show, just the other day. So all 10 episodes of that are up review-wise, so you can enjoy that. But it's worth mentioning as well that The Haunting of Hill House, the next Netflix show that at least I'm covering, because Car's on vacation, and it launched yesterday. So because of that, I'm the one doing that on my own. The first review's already up at the time of recording. It was pretty good, the first episode. So if you want a horror TV show to watch, it might be worth checking out. And check out the reviews, of course, after each episode for thoughts and insights and things, because it's important, I guess. I don't know. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? I'm actually just trying to go to the YouTube channel to see what else has been happening recently, so I can properly promote recent content. Yeah, obviously it's October. It's the October-thons, bunch of extra Screams After Midnight episodes. That's the horror movie podcast that I do with Tim, so check out that. But that's pretty much it. I mentioned Charmed earlier on. Charmed's pilot's coming this Sunday night. I'll be covering that pilot on my own. If that's something that's good and we want to keep going with it, then obviously Connor will catch up and he'll be there for episode 2, presumably. It depends if I can convince him. I think we're assuming it's not going to be that good, but I'll see if I can convince him if it is good. But I don't want to like put my foot down right now, because I've not seen it yet. So we'll see if it's any worth doing. So that's cool. So we've got a bunch of stuff coming. I'm pretty sure there was something else about to mention. Something else important. Damn it. What was it? What else is happening? Something's coming. Something that already happened. Oh yeah, TV from the Multiverse. Yeah, it's worth mentioning that, since it's also TV reviews. TV from the Multiverse this week was a little bit early, and it had just the new premiere of The Flash and the premiere of Black Lightning, their new seasons. We had good. It actually was a long episode for just having 2 episodes to talk about. We went for over an hour, so it was a good meaty conversation, especially about Flash. But so that's something we do every week, is television for the Multiverse, where we review the DC shows of the week. So obviously next week's will be interesting, because we'll have the first Titans in there, and we'll have there'll be more shows back. Supergirl's coming back, Arrow will be back. I think the only one that's not back by then is Legends, which will be the following week. So we do that every week. as well, so look out for that. Otherwise, though, let us know what you thought of the news this week in the comments. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz. If you want to get me specifically on Twitter, it's at Wibble89. And of course, it would be silly not to promote Patreon by the end of the show. Patreon.com/mailedfuzztv. If you want to support the channel and the show and everything we do here and keep all the content coming, you can go over there and get bonuses, you get stuff early sometimes, you get, voting rights on some stuff at various tiers, but you can support the show and everything we do for $1 a month if you want, and that's amazing if you do that. So go have a look. It's also got a handy list at the top of the post for all the different shows we have. So even if you're not going to become a patron, you can use it as a handy resource to see all the different things we do at the top. So that is me. That has been the TV news. My voice is killing me because I have been speaking non-stop for 75 minutes, give or take. And it's funny, like, you don't realise how much easier it is talking for this long when you're going back and forth with another person, because you have all these natural breaks and you can take a drink more often. But hopefully this was enjoyable. Hopefully I held my own. Hopefully this was still an enjoyable news show if you're used to watching this show. And yeah, so as far as the other news programs, there probably will be a movie news and trailer talks 50-50. I'll see if there's enough trailers that I think are worth talking about. And I know there was an Aladdin trailer, but I don't care about Disney movies that much, so you're just going to get snark from me when I talk about Aladdin. So if you want that, if you really want that, then let me know, but we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, so look out for more Haunting of Hill House reviews over the next week. Look out for the Charm pilot. I will be covering Doctor Who's second episode on my own. The first episode review went up with Connor, of course, last week, and I will be covering this week's The Deuce on my own. I'm very busy, basically, is what I'm saying. A lot of things to do. But that is me. That has been the TV news. Thank you once again for watching and listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?